What up, watch peeps? I made something crazy. I stumbled across a video on the Watch Complications YouTube channel where he was putting a Ronda 515, that's a super common Swiss quartz movement, into an SKX build. I haven't done that before, so it was game on. I had no idea what kind of watch I wanted to build, but I found some really wacky stuff and got inspired. So I reached out to Brian, he printed me up the movement holder, I ordered a bunch of parts and got to work. So let's take a look. I'm Pete and we are Chillin' with Watches. So it starts with this 3D printed movement holder and spacer. The spacer goes in between the chapter ring and the dial so that the crown stem lines up perfectly with the hole in an SKX case. This is an aftermarket case here that I'm going to use. The crystal's not in it right now because I am changing the chapter ring. And then you got this movement holder that goes around your quartz Ronda 515. Now this is my second one because the first one I got, the hands post was too short for the dial that I am using. And we'll take this out and take a closer look at it. But I am using, like I said, this one's going to be wacky, guys. And I'm actually using this. I painted a spacer silver, metallic silver, so that it kind of will blend in with the brushed chapter ring that I plan on using. But here's the dial. Okay, so I found this thing on AliExpress, and you know, I thought if I'm going to do a wacky quartz build, I'm going all the way. Pink dial with a pig and a heart. I don't know what that's supposed to mean or who even dreamed this up, but it is brilliant and it's going to make an awesome watch. I was originally going to use this awesome kind of pink bezel that I found. I thought would go with it fantastically, but it's a sloped bezel, as you can see here, and if I want to use that with this case, it's fine, but I have to then go and get like a higher domed sapphire crystal. I didn't want to do all that because it already comes with a flat sapphire. So I found this gray flat ceramic sapphire that is actually glossy like the dial. Gray and pink look great together. I think this is going to be fantastic. So first step is we're going to get this dial put onto this movement. So let's get to that. So let me show you guys what I was talking about here with this. This is the high hand post version of the Ronda 515. I originally had the regular one. I think this is a Seiko dial. It was made for Seikos. And I think it is thicker than what is normally used with the Ronda 515. So when I put it on top here, and I'm going to use dial dots, there was barely any hands post sticking through for me to get the hands mounted on. So that's why I switched to this high hands post version of the movement. So I'm going to go ahead and get some dial dots on here and we'll check that out. Alright, so when I say dial dots, I don't actually mean dial dots. What I cut is a thin strip of this 3M 467 MP, and you can see better on this end. I'll take nail clippers so that it gives it a little bit of a rounded edge, and then I'll take those tiny pieces, show you what I do here, and I put them on the plastic edge of the movement, as you can see here and on the other side. And now the top, I've already the adhesive still on, so I'm going to take that top part off, and then we're going to be able to drop the dial on there and it will then stick in place. Now I've used these and had these stick for a year later. I've gone back in to remod these watches and had to pry the dial off with a screwdriver, so they actually stay on pretty good. Let me get the dial on and we'll take a look at that. So I did some preliminary testing. This is going into a Seiko case with the 4 o'clock crown, which is actually more like a 345 crown. I did a little bit of testing to make sure that since this movement was not designed to work with this dial or this case, that when the crown is at that 345 position, that the date will still line up at 3 o'clock like it does on a Seiko. That all worked out. So getting this dial on here was a matter of lining up the crown post there, or the hands post, and the date window with the correct position. So it looks like it's on nice and straight. So the next step is going to be to put the dial with the hands on this bad boy and see how it looks. Okay, I got the hands on and it was a little dicey because this hour hand actually has to be able to clear that 12 o'clock marker and also fit underneath the minute hand. I was Kind of hoping it would not have to go over top of that 12 o'clock marker, but it did in this case. The tolerances are really thin, but I've got it. It seems to be working. It seems to be running just fine. Does the second hand hit the markers? No. Am I worried about it? No. But the hands are on and everything looks like it should be good. Worst case scenario, I have to come back and get a shorter hour hand and start over. Not the end of the world, just more delays. So, all right, we're going to get this case reassembled next. So this case, this was like 30 bucks for the bundle. And that means the case, it came with everything. Case back, crown, bezel, sapphire crystal, everything you need. All you need to do is to put the movement and dial and hands in it, but it was like 30 bucks. If I show you closer, you see this is not standard SKX. If you look inside, let's see where, here, you can see a little bit of the retention spring that holds the bezel on. So that is a different kind of mechanics than an actual Seiko case would use. Also the chapter ring. If you look at this guy, this is not a standard Seiko chapter ring. They're not stepped like that. That's not how that works. So I can only use the one it came with. I took it out. I painted it this silver metallic, just like I did the spacer that's going to go under it. So those should match. So I got to get this back into that case along with the crystal gasket then put on top of that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this assembled and show it to you guys. All right, I got this all back together and it went together really nicely. You can see that kind of chaptering in there. Works really good. I dropped the ceramic bezel. It's a flat ceramic bezel in here to see. It lines up perfectly flush with the crystal, so I'm kind of excited about that. Next step is to just take this little spacer. I'm going to kind of flip this over, and if you can see this little tiny ledge on the bottom of the chapter ring, that's where the spacer will sit. So that combined with the dial and movement, it'll line up the stem with the hole in the case perfectly. So here is the movement from the back side, and if you look here, let's see if we zoom in, see there's a little like kind of cutout there, half circle shape on the movement. That lines up with this little nub on his 3D printed movement holder. So with those two lined up, you can just kind of drop this right over there and you'll see it keeps it from rotating and holds it right in place. Now we're just going to flip this whole thing over, set the case down on top of it. All right, so with this all set, the crown removed, the stem removed, this with the spacer in place, our next step is literally to just drop this over top. Now we're starting to see what it's going to look like as a watch. This thing's going to be crazy. So yeah, I just got it now. You just flip this whole mess over. You'll see that kind of spacer still in place. The case back will hold that spacer down, hold the dial nice and tight to the chapter ring. I'm just going to have to get the crown inserted and we'll cut the stem to fit there and we are in business. All right, guys, I got that all in. The crown is in and attached. Now I have another video on how to cut a crown stem if you want to go check that out, basically how to size it. So basically what you want to do is just you want to compress that spring all the way. When it's fully compressed, that shortest distance gap in between the crown and the case, that's how much of the stem you're going to need to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now so we can get this stem fully seated and get this case back on. All right, I got it in. Everything seems to be in there lined up really nice. The crown threads, it works. I may have overshot the stem, cut it a little too short, not really a nice crown pop like there should be. I'm not too worried about that. Live and learn. A couple things I did learn is that so when you're using these movement holders, this goes around the movement, and this is making up a gap in the case where this movement is smaller than an NH35. Another part of it is the case back itself is integral to kind of holding this. This isn't actually a Seiko case back, but I can demonstrate what I'm talking about. See how the kind of the movement holder fits into this case back? That keeps it from being able to slide around vertically. So you kind of want to have the case back on a little bit when you're screwing this crown in. Even just the tension from the crown spring can try to move everything around inside. And that brings me to the last thing I learned is that dial dots is probably not ideal when you're already trying to do something that's not supposed to be, because dial dots, it's just tape basically, and it allows that dial to move a little bit on top of the movement. Normally it'll just slowly spring back to where it was at, but every time you're pushing and pulling laterally with the crown and the stem, you're kind of wiggling everything around a little bit. So live and learn. I mean, it's definitely worked. It's doable. I would love to use a real 515 dial, but they just don't make any cool ones with hearts and pigs on them. All right, let's get this bezel on and see this final finished product. One other last point, I ended up not needing this spacer that goes between the dial and the chapter ring, because this dial that I'm using is already thicker than the normal dials used with a 515, hence I needed to use that high hands post. That dial itself made up this extra distance, and the crown stem lined up good without it. With this in place, that put the crown stem off by a little bit in my particular circumstance. One thing I did like about this case that I got is that it already had a adhesive ring on the bezel itself. So I just got to kind of peel this tape off and drop the bezel in there lined up. So I'm going to do that off camera, but then I will show you the finished product. Okay guys, 2 more things I learned. Pink and gray together is sexy, and this thing is freaking bonkers. I love the glossy dial and this glossy gray bezel. I was kind of thinking about putting pink inlay in the bezel insert, but it's not real deep. I don't think it would take very well. And yeah, the white with the white on the dial all comes together really good. Let's toss this thing on a bracelet and see how it wears. Oh man, this thing is fun. So it's a little lighter because of the quartz movement, right? And I think that means it supports this Uncle Seiko kind of thinner, lighter Z199 really well. Just kind of goes well with the overall vibe of this watch. I am digging it. I'm going to have some fun with this. Get some pics up for you guys. But yeah, well, I'm all done, man. I'll put links to watch complications and how to get these movement holders and Esslinger and places like that where I got some of the other parts in the description. But there you go, a Quartz SKX. The love pig is a little love place where we can get together. I don't even remember what I wanted to say next. Obviously, I wasn't building this to impress anyone or for Instagram likes. It was purely for my own joy and just to do something new. So, mission accomplished. All right, before I let you go, the sneaker check. Oh, the sneaker check. I scored the new Sacai Blazer low tops on sneakers, and I freaking love them. So, all right, if it's not too much trouble, please like, subscribe, and come back next time. Peace. Love pig baby.